This video is brought to you by Ground News. For the past few weeks, the Trump administration has been negotiating a deal that would give the US preferential access to mineral deposits in exchange for some sort of American military assistance. Nope, we're not talking about the much-touted Ukraine-US mineral deals. Rather, we're talking about the deal that Trump is apparently negotiating with the Democratic Republic of the Congo, or DRC, where President Felix Tshisekedi is trying to leverage his country's massive mineral wealth to get Trump to help him push out the Rwandan-backed rebels that have been making steady advances in the country's east. So in this video, we're going to look at this prospective US-Congo minerals deal, and whether it could actually happen. Who's more influential, Trump or Putin? Well, we asked the TLDR team and audience to rank a bunch of powerful people, and we have the results. Find out the full list in the next copy of our magazine, Too Long. Pre-order a copy by clicking the link in the description. So let's start with a bit of context about the ongoing war in the DRC. Here, we've sort of got to go back to the Rwandan genocide in 1994, when, over the course of just 100 or so days, ethnic Hutu militias killed some 800,000 ethnic Tutsis and moderate Hutus. The genocide only ended after a Tutsi rebel group fought and took control of the country, prompting more than 2 million Hutus to flee to the eastern DRC. In 1996, Rwanda invaded the DRC, seeking to root out the remaining extremists responsible for the genocide who had sought refuge across the border. This invasion sparked the First Congo War, which by 1997 saw the country's dictator toppled and replaced by his longtime opponent, Laurent Kabila, who had the backing of Rwanda and its allies. This relationship quickly deteriorated, and Kabila ordered Rwandan and other foreign troops out of the country in 1998, setting in motion the devastating Second Congo War, also known as the Great War of Africa, which ended up involving 9 countries. The war only ended after 5 years of fighting, in 2003, during which time Kabila was assassinated and replaced by his son Joseph. However, while the interstate war might have finished, conflict in the eastern DRC persisted, with various militias vying for control. In 2012, a new, relatively powerful rebel group called M23 was formed in the region by ex-members of another Tutsi-dominated militia that had signed a peace agreement with the DRC government 3 years earlier. In 2012 and 13, M23 launched a major rebellion in North Kivu, which was eventually put down by the Congolese army and UN forces. However, M23 re-emerged in 2022 with a new and ongoing offensive in North Kivu that has once again seen them seize swathes of territory, displacing a huge number of people, while also reigniting tensions between Rwanda and the DRC. This is because Rwanda supports M23. A recent UN experts report said the Rwandan military has de facto control over M23 operations, and estimated that there are upwards of 4,000 actual Rwandan soldiers fighting alongside M23 in the DRC. Rwanda's stated justification is that it needs to protect its own security and the safety of ethnic Tutsis in the eastern DRC. But it's also clearly true that Rwanda is trying to get its hands on some of the DRC's minerals. UN experts claim that M23 has, quote, ensured a monopoly for the export to Rwanda of coltan, essential in electronic devices, and Rwanda's gold exports have spiked in recent years. This is despite the fact that Rwanda is not a major gold producer, which means this gold is probably coming from mining towns occupied by M23, like Lumbishi in South Kivu. Anyway, this offensive has accelerated in recent months, and in January, M23 took control of Goma, the capital of North Kivu province and the easternmost major city in the DRC, home to between 800,000 and 2 million residents. Regional forces from neighbouring African countries that were supposed to provide some help have failed to hold back the rebels, and M23 has even talked about advancing west in a bid to seize the DRC capital, Kinshasa. And this is why the DRC and its president Felix Tshisekedi are apparently looking to the US. Tshisekedi has presumably seen that the new Trump administration is interested in securing access to minerals, as has been made evident by the ongoing negotiations over a minerals deal in Ukraine, and realised that he could leverage DRC's mineral wealth to get the US to help out. Negotiations apparently began on February the 8th, only a few days after M23 captured Goma, when Tshisekedi wrote a letter to Trump offering the US a strategic advantage by securing critical minerals such as cobalt, lithium, copper and tantalum, which Tshisekedi suggested could then be stored in Trump's new sovereign wealth fund. In exchange, Tshisekedi asked Trump for a formal security pact to help defeat M23. And this month, the Congolese foreign minister claimed that both parties were, quote, investing the necessary time to get a deal done, while the US State Department said it was open to a deal. So, does this deal actually make sense? Well, at first glance, sort of. For starters, the DRC does indeed have enormous mineral deposits. The country is the world's dominant producer of cobalt, and a significant producer of copper, tantalum, diamonds, and tin. The DRC probably also has significant deposits of lithium and other critical minerals as well, but constant political instability has prevented these deposits from being exploited. It also presumably wouldn't be too difficult for the US to force M23 out, with no risk of conflict with a major power. This might make this deal more attractive to Trump than the Ukraine deal. After all, Rwanda isn't Russia, and Ukraine's mineral wealth is often overstated. It could also be good news for the DRC. Not only would they be rid of M23, they would also be able to diversify their export base. Currently, the DRC's mining industry is dominated by Chinese firms, and the vast majority of their raw minerals get exported to China for processing. Bringing the US in would maybe allow the DRC to leverage the geopolitical competition between the two superpowers, and get either better prices for its exports or more investment. However, think about it a bit longer, and there are clearly some big issues. First, while the US might be able to push back M23, there are loads of different militias in the eastern DRC, and there would be a risk of the US getting dragged into a multi-party civil war, as happened in Afghanistan and Iraq. Second, the US government won't be doing the mining itself, and it's hard to imagine Trump convincing American companies to invest in the DRC. The reason the DRC's mining industry is dominated by Chinese firms is that, for a variety of reasons, including less stringent domestic laws and support from the CCP, Chinese firms are generally happier to invest and work in politically unstable countries than their American counterparts. Third, this would go down terribly both in the US, where voters generally want the US military to disentangle itself from the world's conflicts, and internationally, not least because it would look suspiciously neo-colonial. This might be why the DRC is apparently also in talks with Blackwater, the notorious US private security firm, who won't be so worried about the optics of getting involved against M23. This story about the prospective US-Congo minerals deal has been covered by more than 74 sources. Interestingly, we know that more than 3 of these have been reported by the left, and more than 8 of these have been reported by the right. That's because this week's sponsor, Ground News, are experts on pulling back the curtain on media bias. Built by a former NASA engineer on a mission to give readers an easy, data-driven, objective way to read the news, they ingest over 50,000 articles from all over the world, and then organise each by story. For each and every story, you can see the number of reporting sources, where these sources lead on the political spectrum at an individual level and group level, compare the headlines of each source, and read each article all without ever leaving the app. But one of the best parts of the app is their comparison feature, which highlights specific differences in left-leaning and right-leaning reporting. For example, for this story, left-leaning outlets tended to focus on the humanitarian crisis in the Congo, while right-leaning outlets highlighted the pros and cons to any minerals deal from the US perspective. Ground News is such a useful tool for our current media landscape, and I think an app like this will only become more essential as the media landscape continues to evolve. If you're interested in everything that Ground News has to offer, you can get 40% off the unlimited access Vantage plan using the link in the description or by scanning the QR code. This offer is only available here, so make sure you go to ground.news/TLDR or click the link in the description to get started and support an independent news platform working to make the media landscape more transparent.